Hey there, it's Catherine from Moonstarlodge, and it's St. Patrick's Day for those of you who celebrate. I bring that up because it's the day before the full moon of Ways of the Truth. This is an impromptu video. I didn't sleep at all last night. The energies of the full moon can do that. Too much coffee can do that too. But I have been feeling a pressure from Spirit to discuss some issues in the world of parapsychology, psychospiritual development, and the inherent truth of what the reality is like to be a psychic medium. And I believe that this has bubbled up from Spirit. If I take the kinds of things they're saying and make it into a gestalt, I have been mentioning the classes that will be resuming, only in a different format using the coffee profile, because we'll be able to keep them online that way and have a bigger student base from more parts of the world. I feel a pressure to get some of these teachings out there. Now, having said that, I've been teaching this since I was an undergraduate student, being forced to teach these topics to other, even fresher freshmen. And so we're talking from around about 1980. I've been teaching psychospiritual development, and of course, after graduation, I became a spiritualist minister. So in doing my degree in psychology and parapsychology, I spent 7 years at the university with a couple of breaks in there, short breaks in that 7-year period, and moving on to working with the Spiritualist Church. As an Indigenous woman, I was very reluctant to get connected with a church, but by the same token, the Spiritualist tradition was the closest thing that I could get to the concept of communion with ancestors, and excuse me, and their mediumship training is exquisite. At least it was in those days. There were a lot of Scottish mediums and people from Great Britain who had experience with the Spiritualist National Union. I could be a B-class member of the Spiritualist National Union because I didn't live in Britain. I lived afar, so I was, you can only be an A-class member if you live in the United Kingdom. But I spent about 6 years with the Spiritualist Church, and then after that I went and did shamanic training in the north for about 11 and a half years. What should have taken about 8 years, but marriages, divorces, several surgeries later, it took me longer. But it allowed me at the same time to mature into the kind of mediumship that came with a very solid foundation. I thought of it like a triangle. I had the science and the professional training in university. I had the historic training, classical mediumship training from the spiritualist tradition, and the third side of the triangle was the shamanic training. So they all morphed into each other, and there are some overlaps, and there are some things which are distinct. Long before I ever went to university, as a young child, spewing things about spirits and such, I became aware by the time I was about 7 years old, that once I went to school, other people didn't hear or see spirits the way I did, and that I needed to learn to shut up about it so as not to be, laughed at or ostracized. But for those people within the family with whom I could speak about these things, I became aware of situations where there were people who claimed to be friends and claimed to want to be with me, and the unfortunate reality, I became wary very young and learned the hard way that there are people out there that only wanted me or to be around me or would isolate me from family for a brief period of time just to get whatever information I could get for them from spirit. So I brought that forward into my teen years, that wariness of discussing this, but still not being able to shut off any sort of psychic gifts. So by the time I got to university, I wanted that training desperately. I either wanted to be told I had some kind of mental illness or whatever, or was this really a valid gift? And because I didn't think of it as a gift from God, I just wanted it all to go away. But it didn't go away. In fact, it got much more amplified in the teen years with the escalating size of the pituitary and all those raging hormones. Mine got directed into psychic growth. So by the time I was graduating university, I vowed to myself and to the Creator that I would endeavor to make a safe space for people to learn, and that they didn't have to go to a university or community college to learn this. So I brought all my tools, all my experiences from university, working with the Spiritualist National Union at a distance, working with the Spiritualist Church, working in shamanism. And I have been teaching psychospiritual development, which is the way I call this work, for now since 1980. So we're talking 42 years. And usually we would run 3 sessions a year, 10 to 12 weeks a session, and we'd have beginner, intermediate, advanced, and so on. Many people watching this video will already have experienced those classes, and they are a lot of fun. They're a lot of work, but when you're able to connect one-on-one with people and go through the exercises, it's very helpful. Let's have a look at some of the things. You don't need a huge kit of things to deal with the mind. In our classes, we bring the good old Zener cards from Duke University and Dr. J.B. Ryan and all his years of pre-computer assessment of gifts. We bring the gifts of tools. Excuse me. Gina, if you're watching, there's Jorge. In past classes, we had the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull before Anna passed away. You have to have the foundation for this stuff, and so we get into the multiple C's: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairolfaction, claircognizance, clairgustance. Under the bailiwick of psychometry, we have psychokinesis, we have automatic writing, automatic art, automatic music. We have scrying using crystals. We have the work of dowsing with pendulums and dowsing with dowsing rods. They're not the same thing. We have all the dice testing that goes back to not just J.B. Ryan and Duke University. We have the concept of crystals and working with this and the levels of the body. We have the platonic solids here in crystal form, simply because sacred geometry plays into all of these teachings. Not everyone, you can flip the camera, Brian. And of course, I should say we have the divination skills, the working with cards and crystals and that sort of thing. I think it's important to know that it takes time to hone a gift. And the sooner a person starts in proper training, there's an old saying, about closing the barn door after the horse gets out. You want to not develop bad habits, especially around boundaries, and especially around integrity and ethics in this work. This video is not an advertising for the upcoming classes. I have more people on waiting lists than, you can imagine. Because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to teach, and there are a lot of very frustrated people who want to be able to do this work. So moving to the coffee platform allows me to incorporate more people into this training, but I like to keep it at the same time somewhat intimate, because you're developing relationships over that 10 to 12 weeks with people who you won't know usually, but by the time you have connected with them openly in a class, you know them very intimately. So those intimate bonds need boundaries, and they need protection. I wish I had a loonie for every relationship I've had as friends who have in adulthood changed when I couldn't provide the kind of psychic information for them that they felt I should. Sick family members, people in spirit, lost pets, murdered children, all this kind of stuff. There are times when I've been able to find, with Spirit's help, and paperwork like wills and estates, so that people didn't lose a home. Seeing clairvoyantly that the papers were taped under the drawer in a dresser in a basement, turned backwards to the, and upside down. That kind of stuff, if it's meant to come, Spirit gives that. One of the biggest and hardest things for me as a member of the Society for Good-Hearted Ones is when Spirit does not bring forth the information that a querent wants. It's even harder still when it's somebody who's a friend that you know and care for and have shared pizza with and gone to the lake with and spent time in a cabin, that sort of thing. It's very, very difficult when their dog has been stolen and Spirit will not give you the information of where that dog is. I can't see it. I can't remote view to the dog. The veil gets dropped. It's like a curtain on a stage. It gets dropped. And even the dearest of friends sometimes do not understand why, if I could do it before, I can't do it today. But it's not up to me. It's up to the guides, teachers, angels, archangels, ancestors, other spirits. There are 9 categories, umbrella categories of spirit guides and teachers, and I'm very clear in my classes. I will deal with 8 of those 9 categories. And within those categories, there are many, many subcategories. And when you get working in this work, whether it's clairaudience, which is hearing, clairsentience, which is feeling spirits, that sort of thing, you're going to be able to move between the classifications of spirits. So if there's so many classifications, why does certain information get stopped? And that's because no matter how gifted we are not allowed to interfere with the karmic path of another person. If their incarnation, their present incarnation, includes certain lessons of what it's like to lose something, or to have someone die, or their pet get lost, or their child get sick and die. If it's their karmic journey, I cannot provide information that alters how they proceed with their own karmic walk. So, learning how to be a medium takes a long time. Learning how to do it correctly and backpedaling from bad habits and behaviors and, stuff that doesn't belong within this takes time. Ethical boundaries are helpful. I found that the spiritualist mediums were very good at helping with ethical boundaries around what you should talk about and what you shouldn't talk about with people, like death, getting, for example, permission to bring information about death. In fact, in people coming to me privately sign a consent that I'm allowed to talk, and I verbally go through what they're okay, comfortable, because it's not up to me to violate a person's boundaries and upset them with information that I can bring forward. So now that I'm in my mid-60s, it's taken a long time to get over what the scared 15-year-old who was ostracized and blamed and laughed at in high school. It's taken a long time for me to build the skill sets. I hearken back to these old mediums, and they were like aunties. In the indigenous culture, we have aunties in the community, people who aren't necessarily blood related, but who look out for the young ones so that they can take some of the pressure off the parents. They give a clear guidance without the emotional boundary that can get them sucked in. So we are so glad that Jenny has aunties that we've never met in the indigenous circles in which Jenny functions at university. And these old spiritualist mediums were to me, when I was a very young woman learning this, they were like the aunties helping me to hone skill sets to protect me as a person. So when you take the classes, if you do, in the weeks and months to come, you can see from the things we've shown you that there's not a lot of kit involved, but there is a lot of work, and it's joyful work. And I had an 85 or 86-year-old man write to me yesterday and say he saw spirit for the first time. And it was in a hypnopompic state of awakening, and he had a conversation with a very famous psychically gifted person who has passed on. It's never too late to start this work, and it's never too late to hone your skills. We are always honing our skills. I hope I never stop honing my skills. So I don't want this to be a long video. I just want you to know that we will be opening these classes up in the near future. And, as long as you come with an open heart and an open mind, and understand that you may have to get a little bit of a thick skin by the time you've graduated, it's a glorious opportunity because we expand our horizons. And spirit just bends over backwards like a Saint Bernard trying to help us. Spirit wants the communion. Our communion with spirits is the imperative here, in a good and sacred way, and in the way of right relationship. So enjoy this full moon of Ways the Truth, and I hope as we experience our own truths, marching forward here with the pandemic having become endemic in the population, as it abates and we can connect together again Let's come together in a light of joy and peace and growth and love. Aho, miigwech, nyowen. Peace.